Tim Hammond said many urologists in the United States don't understand how the penile skin system actually works. And when you hear a statement like that, and from our position, we know that's the truth, but it's really an unfathomable statement for it's something that really is it almost seems impossible that it is true. But that's the state that we're in right now is really an elementary understanding of basic penile anatomy in relation to the foreskin is just completely lost to these people. Jared kind of posts himself, or he retweets what somebody says here, this individual named Celestial. They go, every doctor urologist that doesn't understand basic male anatomy, foreskin function, and anatomy should be fired. And Jared retweeted this saying there would be almost no urologists left. And then I said down below, it's like going to an optometrist in 2026 and they don't understand that the retina, the tissue that kind of lines the back of your ocular cavity, that tissue is light sensing tissue, that the retina is light sensing tissue, which every optometrist in 2026 knows very well. Jared goes, there would be almost no urologists left. It's kind of like, okay, well, so be it. Like we basically need to train a new generation of physicians that operate from first principles in the sense that they can't just take existing knowledge or the lack of existing knowledge and build their whole mental model on that alone. They need to operate from a position of challenging everything, number one, and building kind of their own understanding organically of anatomy without strictly relying on existing subject matter that exists or existing literature that exists on this. So from the sense that, yeah, there'd be no urologists left, I think I would be okay with basically firing all the existing urologists that exists in the United States right now and training a new generation of them. And, obviously there would be major issues with that and major complications with that. And it wouldn't even be really realistic. And we'd need to retain, a lot of the existing urologists. But and we wouldn't be able to actually do that. But I wish we could because they failed so catastrophically, where basically laymen with no specialized training are outcompeting them in this understanding right now, and it's like a wild asymmetry where we're the laymen are actually the subject matter experts on foreskin anatomy. Go
Looks
ahead,
like
sir.
the medical education system is very inadequate for this
Right, but
department.
it's like why didn't we how were we able to figure this out and they weren't?
Well, that's because the medical industrial complex profits from circumcision, so they don't want them to know. So the business is that they don't want them to have any objection to doing it. They don't want them to think, wait, I shouldn't be cutting this off.
Right. I think there's a lot more to it actually than like it almost requires an intentional sort of dismissal or there's some emotional blockage here that they can't get past. Because it's like, oh, well, if this is valuable tissue, then we're a nation of child mutilators.
Yeah, that would be the
So
conflict there. That would be the problem.
I think there's a lot of
That would be them understanding they shouldn't be cutting off the foreskin. Yes.
right. It's like, oh, if this is valuable tissue, then I shouldn't be just pipelining people into foreskin amputations for minor cases of phimosis and things like that. For balanitis, we should really preserve this tissue at all costs. I think the word is like antithetical to everything that they're to the way that they operate right now. And then lastly, there was this interesting story recently published around this company called Kind Biotechnology that is working on creating these isolated organs, essentially, that are that can form without a central nervous system and brain. And I think that they grow them inside of animals potentially if I remember correctly. I'd have to go read this article again, but they're yeah, it can be grown inside of an animal's womb and then harvested for transplantation, so a collection of organs. So sounds kind of very science fiction-y, sounds kind of maybe dystopian a little bit, but these type of organoids, I think is what they're called, are kind of right on the horizon here. Um, so that's something to keep an eye on is, regenerative medicine is really, really starting to pick up here. I think the large language models and synthetic intelligence are going to play a big role in this as well. But there's definitely some interesting regenerative medicine pursuits on the horizon here.
Would you invest in that company?
I would, I mean, yeah, if I had a lot of disposable income here, I would definitely start investing in regenerative medicine startups and things like that. Um, I would say, or certainly evaluate it more because I think it's really about to kick off in the regenerative medicine space.
Are
The end of the 2020s here and the
Mhm.
start of 2030s is going to be some big, major, major developments in regenerative medicine, in just a lot of sciences though. So, but biology in particular, like the LLM, the major synthetic intelligence companies like Anthropic and OpenAI and Google, they're starting to discuss this a lot about how, it's starting to really get into the hard side. These LLMs are starting to really mm, pull their weight in the hard sciences, where they're starting to really make breakthroughs and innovations and get a lot of work done in the hard sciences. And they're starting to talk about biology in particular. They're like, we're looking to leverage these for breakthroughs in biology. So yeah, I think we got some very interesting things on the horizon here. And we're in an interesting time to live.
What do
Okay, the
you
last
think this
thing.
has?
Oh, go ahead.
What do you think that has to offer?
Yeah, well, in terms of like foreskin regeneration and things like that, I think that yeah, I think that it's possible, in the next 10 years, we're going to see that possibly come to fruition. So where before it maybe felt like a lot longer, it's possible in the next 10 years we get a satisfactory, acceptable, regenerated foreskin that's better than if you were to just restore or something like that. I think that is legitimately on the horizon. Things would really have to be fast tracked with FDA approval and things like that. But yeah, it's possible we get actually, solid therapeutic solutions here in the near future. Although I'm not really in a position to make that analysis. It's based on all the literature that I'm reading and the studies that I'm reading and the information that's being presented and the momentum right now in this space. It does feel very positive. Like there's just major innovations and breakthroughs happening at a rate that um, is not comparable to the past. So we're really in an age of innovation and exploration, and that is maybe more substantial than it was historically.
Gives me
So
hope.
we're accelerating really rapidly here, is what I'm saying. Where it's going to start, I think, looking really exponential, where before it was like maybe a linear progression. Now the chart's going to look like this all of a sudden.
That's
Uh,
great.
what?
That's great.
Yeah, yeah. That's just my prediction, but we'll see. But yeah, that's definitely my prediction, barring some crazy unforeseen phenomenon. That's the direction I think we're going down. Last thing I want to highlight is my mom reached out to me a little earlier and shared with me that my grandma, my grandma's like ex-boyfriend from the past had shared with her this Jimmy Dore video that Eric Klopper was a guest on, where they talked about um, the horrors of infant circumcision. And my grandma's ex-boyfriend was like, "Can you believe this is going on? I never knew anything about this. Do you know about this?" And my grandma was like, "Yeah, it's really impacted our family. My grandson has, really suffers from this. And yeah, it's something we're totally aware of." But it's just showing how this is, is really starting to breach the mainstream, this conversation now. It's really starting to get dramatically more into the mainstream than it was in the past. And I just think it's a good sign. It's good momentum. And this is about to wind down here, Scott. So do you have any closing remarks?
Now that the discussion about circumcision is entering the mainstream, what would you do? Would you try to get into the spotlight? Would you try to get anyone into? Do
Yeah,
you
yeah.
think it would be
I
good
mean,
to start
I think
reaching
this is
out
the time to
to
increase
people?
our exposure and things like that. So, it's the time to really press the pedal down on the gas here.